From the Sky News Centre, this is Paul Murray Live.
I didn't win Powerball either. Apparently the winner is somebody in South Australia. So if in the next couple of days your next door neighbour's just bought a brand new boat after last week when she didn't have enough money, that might be the little giveaway. But like many Australians, that frustration, I mean, what was it, 150 million bucks was on the table. One of the joys of the lottos and all the rest of it is, look, you know you're not going to win, but in the time between when you buy the ticket, and I still go into what, you know, if there's a news agency that's still around within 25 kilometres of a joint, I still go in and get the physical ticket. And, you know, just for a day you can think about the cars you might buy with 150 mil, the houses you might be able to buy. And the good news about those houses is that under the Albanese government, you will get a credit for your power, because those houses are apparently just the same as the one-bedroom housing commission ones. Oh, you'd be thinking about where you're going to travel. Like, don't get me wrong, it'd still work. I'd bring a camera with me, but it'd be like, good evening tonight from New York. We'd be doing a lot of shows from Las Vegas, I wouldn't lie. But of course, you know, reality now sits in and we're back to our normal lives and the fantasy is over. However, if you happen to work for the Department of Agriculture, there's something that they have built into their workplace that is really going to soothe the pain. Lego. Yeah, how's this? Apparently the Department of Agriculture lets their staff play with Lego and jigsaw puzzles to, quote, de-stress. So firstly, you pay them to work there, but then when, you know, they're just feeling a bit stressy, it's time to go off and make Lego. Well done to the Telegraph here, because they have seen photos, apparently, of the activity tables that are set up by the Federal Department of Agriculture, Fisheries and Forestries at Agriculture House in Canberra. And the people who apparently saw it were a little shocked at the time, which is in part why they told the paper. The visitors were told the elaborate jigsaw puzzles on multi-piece Lego World tables were set up in rooms for staff to play when they're feeling stressed or need time out. Look, I don't know what you do for a job, but I'm pretty sure you don't even have time in the day to just pull over to the side of the road and start putting some Lego together. You just walk out of the office, no, sorry, I'm out of here. I just need to do a bit of puzzle work. Can I see the photos, please? Now, these are the actual photos of the actual Lego tables that are there to de-stress the workers of the Agriculture Department. If that's not enough, this is the jigsaw puzzle. These are adults. The adults working in the Agriculture Department. Now, again, when people saw this, they were astonished to see the setup. And they asked staff if they were serious. It was, put to them that it worked something like a time-out space or a Zen garden. Who's got a Zen garden at work? Imagine that on the building site. Sorry, fellas, just 1 second. Don't know why they're English, but you get the point. I'm just going to go and do the Zen garden. It's hilarious. Like a kid's preschool set up for snowflakes, says the person who reported this to the paper. Asked about how much the de-stressing Lego and puzzle game space actually cost when it was introduced and its purpose, a departmental spokesperson. So again, somebody who probably has access to the playground. The Department's National Office, Agriculture House, has various formal, such as meeting rooms and informal collaboration, and breakout spaces, such as lunch rooms and casual seating. Yeah, but anyway, about the Lego. Remember, this government gave itself the highest pay rise in 10 years if you're a politician. The highest pay rise if you're a public servant in 10 years. But due to the stress of having to come into the office and not working from home, like way too many public servants still do, I just need to go play some Lego. Here's an idea. If you'd like to actually understand what it's like to be stressful if you live in the Agriculture Department, perhaps you should go and do a thing called farming. Actually go and have a look at how agriculture actually works. You reckon that anyone on the back of a tractor has got time to do a crossword puzzle, or somebody milking a cow who had to get up at birds this morning and tomorrow and the day after and the day after, including the weekends, has that option? Of course not. Other people's money, other people's priorities, and sadly, yet again, an example about the people who regulate everything, tell you what you can't do, can't make it through a day without playing like a toddler. Speaking of, in terms of effectiveness, remember Matt Keane. Matt Keane was the Energy and Climate Minister in the former New South Wales government before his factional power meant that he ended up being the Treasurer of New South Wales. Now, he is somebody who claims in his heart of hearts to be all about renewables. We know at one point in time he tried to bring the ghost back, remember, as a special advisor to the New South Wales government, but it didn't happen. And his time when he was the Climate and Energy Minister in New South Wales, at a time...
What we want to see is if there is an opportunity for people to reduce their energy usage, so perhaps not using the dishwasher until you go to bed, that would help.
What a surprise they lost the election. That you are paying through the roof for access to the power grid. But because people like Matt Keane believe that we need to get away from the system that worked to the one that might eventually, fingers crossed, hopefully work, and cost $1 trillion to do so, that, you know, there'll just be little moments where we have to ration power like it's the Second World War, please. Now, as you know, the reality is that the similar warnings have been put forward for the past 2 summers and get ready for the 3rd summer now. Now, the reason we haven't had blackouts for the past 2 summers since his ideological mate, Chris Bowen, yes, I know, the Liberal Party guy who agrees with the Labor Party guy. What a massive surprise. Uni party, but still. They have said that the grid's held up fine for the past couple of years, but the preparation is that yet again, hot summer, we're going to have blackouts. Why? Because the past 2 summers, of course, we've had colder and wetter summers, which means people haven't all been reaching on that 1 day or 2 days or a few days in a week for the air conditioners, but most likely that's going to happen. So in order for New South Wales not to have a scenario where, when everyone reaches for the air conditioner, that the power will just collapse, as you know by now, the New South Wales government, the Labor government, has done what that bloke, Matt Keane, wasn't willing to do when the Liberal government was in power for the best part of, what, a dozen years or so? And that's to actually extend the life of a coal-fired power plant. In fact, one of the oldest in the country. The Eraring power plant needs to stay on board because lots of state governments around the country have, of course, blown them up. They've blown up what used to work because, you know, we've got to do something about climate change, the 1% of the world's problem that Australia is. But in the meantime, you need to turn off your appliances while we spend huge amounts of money moving to a new system. Well, thankfully, again, New South Wales government under Chris Minns, who is playing the Labor Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, off a break, showing the reality that we are in a transition. And the transition means we have to have gas or coal-fired power to be able to prop up the system until not only there's enough renewable energy built, but enough renewable storage built. And as you know, people will now be penalised under some power companies, particularly in New South Wales, if they have solar panels but they don't have a battery worth quite a few $1,000s in their garage to store the power. So in the meantime, the best part of, what, $500 million, otherwise known as a voice referendum, is how much it will cost to keep the coal-fired power station going, not for another 20 years, by the way, just till 27.
The New South Wales Government has secured an agreement with Origin Energy to operate the Eraring Power Station until August 2027. This temporary and targeted agreement will ensure the lights stay on while we manage an orderly exit from coal-fired power.
Now, of course, there is another way we could get baseload power, and that would be nuclear power. Just like many other G20 or G8 nations, many countries across Europe are able to pretend that they can be supported by renewable power because what actually is pumping things is none other than nuclear power. Now, as you've heard this week, the CSIRO has come out and said, too expensive, it'll take too long, i.e. there's a cost of transition. Well, that, of course, has been my argument for, what, 15 years? That those who believe in a renewable future always ignore the cost of transition to that future. And that will be paid for by one of two things, the government or customers. And interestingly, the cost of transition argument is the exact one being used by the left to say why nuclear power is not the option. In fact, on Crikey Today, Dutton's nuclear would spike electricity prices when and if it was able to start in the 2040s. Well, breaking news to them and anyone else who is of the belief that the reason we can't go the nuke route is because the cost of transition. We have been involved in a transition of our power grid at the moment, and it has cost, as the CSIRO told us once, $1 trillion. Now they've magically halved it to $500 billion, where several green groups will tell you that, of course, the building of renewables ends up costing hundreds of billions of dollars. It takes up way more space. We all know that the life cycle of the solar panels is not great. The solar panels come from slave labour in China, but shh, don't tell anyone. So I like the argument is don't go what Dutton wants to do because it'll end up with higher electricity prices because you have to pay to build it. My exact argument about the cost of transition, which has always been the central issue, not about whether Australia needed to change, but if somebody had to be honest about what that change would be. Isn't it amazing that when the change is the one they don't want, suddenly it costs a lot of money? But as you know, right now, as anyone who's paid a power bill any time in the past, 10 years, knows that one of the reasons they keep going uppity up, up, up is because the system that has worked is being replaced by the one that, fingers crossed, will work into the future. But don't worry, when it's all over, it'll be cheaper. Sure. We've got to get rid of Andrew Giles, the immigration minister. Got to boot this bloke. He is not up to it. I unkindly refer to him as an idiot as a minister because he is. Now, as you know, there has been literally crimes, assaults, bashings, and now a murder. And police have accused people who were formerly in detention of being the people responsible. Obviously, a court will decide if they are. But let's have a look here. A person, of course, has been charged with murder who should never have been allowed out of immigration detention. But they were let out of immigration detention. And when they were not in immigration detention, of course, they should have had an ankle bracelet, but they didn't end up having the ankle bracelet. Now, this is as serious as it gets, literally a loss of life and the police believing that someone who the immigration minister had the capacity to deny bail or deny release from immigration detention or put them back in immigration detention because of a whole series of other things that are alleged to have happened before this day. But Andrew Giles gets to stand there and the Westminster system of ministerial accountability does not apply to him because he is a factional mate of the Prime Minister, because he is of the left of the Labor Party. He has the stones to say this. Again, not my fault.
The AAT made a decision to overturn it and they did so notwithstanding the directions which put a very high priority on community safety.
Now, I've heard this before, that there's an independent board and the independent board made the wrong decision. As we've shown you before, he has ultimate oversight. That board is able to report up to him as something on serious matters. So again, his argument is either incompetence or incompetence. And now police believe that there is a person who he could have stopped from being in the community who they believe to be allegedly responsible for a murder. But of course, it's not just the first time. Remember the guy in Western Australia who, of course, didn't end up having the ankle bracelet that he should have had on, and federal prosecutors were argued against him getting bail before he was out and about in the community, and of course is alleged to have bashed a woman in her 70s in Western Australia. Oh no, that's not my fault, nothing to do with me. Well then, of course, there's the scenario where this government, this minister, with the people who were brought out as a result of the High Court, remember they could have just done it one at a time, but they decided no, holus bolus, that many of the people who had broken the rules since coming out, well, all of them got completely forgiven. Why? Because they had been given the wrong visa. Now, remember, they tried to blame that back on the Abbott government, but it was actually the Gillard government that created part of the problem that was ultimately overturned. Then there was also the scenario where the invalid visas, again, resulted in former detainees who breached the visa conditions escaping because, oh, sorry, we got the paperwork wrong. Then there was the scenario, again, about a number of people who basically have gone unpunished. The Australian newspaper has obtained a copy of the list of the Australian Federal Police's charges that had been abandoned in March because of the, sorry, we let you out on the wrong visa. 152 detainees it was at the time. The document shows one of the individuals had been charged with 10 separate counts of breaching curfew. Now, remember, the punishment for that is like about a $100,000 fine and 1 year in jail. But because this bloke, this department, got the visa wrong, they get to walk. Now, again, this bloke has to go. He's got to go because of the legitimate dangers that exist to the community, but he has to go as responsibility for a system that how many times does he get a do-over? Him and clueless Claire O'Neill, of course, his immediate boss before we get to the Prime Minister. Where, remember, they actually released people after the High Court decision without any visa whatsoever, let alone the visa that they then had to replace with another visa because that visa was wrong. Andrew Giles must go. Now, I know the new car smell that doesn't exist anymore around this government because there is no new car smell after 2 years. But when there is literally a trail of victims in the community and you have provided over a system that has failed this many times, even if he is the Prime Minister's mate, he has to pay a price. There has to be a reshuffle. He has to be moved around. Or more importantly, actual accountability would be that he would be sacked as a minister, a point the Liberal Party's been making for some time now about this bloke.
It is chaos. It is time to move on. It is time to change the approach. It is time to be tougher on this situation. We're constantly being told these people are being monitored all the time, and yet offence after offence is alleged to have been committed by the same group. This is abject chaos, and it's time for the Prime Minister to act.
Yeah. Bloody oath. Well done, Zoe, and well done, Chris Kenny. Well done to all of my colleagues here at Sky News who have remained absolutely vigilant on this issue. Same cannot be said for the people actually responsible, including both of the ministers or a Prime Minister who remembered, I don't know anything about this stuff. Now, I want to get into the weeds on an issue that in and around Queensland. One of the many reasons why the Miles government seems like it is headed for the wood chipper at the upcoming election, and rightly so, has been one of the many failures in and around the health system. How many times in a row have I talked about the hospital ramping, the people dying, the issues in regional Queensland where people who deserve much better medical treatment don't end up getting the medical treatment, on and on it goes. Well, this one is an example of politicians who want to change the subject to something that isn't their actual responsibility. Enter into this the current Health Minister, Shannon Fentiman, and the Shadow Health Minister who would look forward to replacing her at the upcoming election. As always, this matter comes up in Parliament, and it particularly came up around the maternity services that are completely collapsing as we speak in parts of Queensland, where literally women in certain sections of Queensland have to travel incredible distances to have a baby. Not acceptable. You're a taxpayer. You should be able to have a bub at your local hospital. Well, Shannon Fentiman was being asked about this failure in question time by the Shadow Health Minister. And you can see that she is answering, and then the Shadow Health Minister yells something out. And then watch Shannon Fentiman go, oh, great, I can turn this into a Twitter pile-on.
Can I say that all of those mums...
Cross your legs gets screamed out. Now, remember, in the federal parliament, this was pretty grubby stuff and it was being thrown around by Lydia Thorpe. Remember that scenario? Well, let's now watch Shannon Fentiman, who is on the losing side of the argument because she is the one who has failed to protect people when it comes to the hospital system, all the way from people who want to have babies through to people who are literally dying in the back of ambulances because 45% of people have to wait in the back of an ambulance before they can get anywhere near a hospital bed because there's not enough hospital beds. When the Speaker notices what's been said, watch Shannon Fentiman and the penny drop for her. I can turn this into, as I say, a Twitter pile-on.
Member for Mudgeeraba, you warned understanding that I was asked you to withdraw that comment.
I withdraw.
You've never seen a person so offended and simultaneously happy at the same time. How good is this? We can change the subject. Well, for her part, the opposition health spokesperson, who shouldn't have yelled out what she yelled out, which is why she withdrew it, well, she has said that one of the reasons she yelled out what she was yelling out was not something sort of sexual or offensive to women. She claims that the reason that she did it was because of the number of women who have to delay birth, potentially because of the failures of the Queensland health system. With Labor suggesting women could just bypass their local hospital and go to another hospital to give birth, I could not believe Labor was telling mothers to cross your legs while in labour. That was the comment that she made. But it didn't matter because, you see, you had the comment being yelled from the evil Liberal Party, the uber feminist who wanted to be Premier, but of course Stephen Miles ended up with the numbers, so she's got to wait to be maybe the opposition leader after the next election if the polls are right. Well, she was off and running on Twitter.
Under parliamentary rules, I now have to repost the video with the correct captions. Whether it's cross or close your legs, it's still abhorrent, completely insulting. So if you have liked, comment or shared the video, please do so again.
Remember, the debate is about the failures of the health system, but let's turn it into moral outrage about what is being said inside the parliament. And it immediately goes off, runs on Twitter, and, oh, we can't possibly elect these people, they don't understand women, you know, the usual garbage. Well, of course, the Twitter pylon works. People start screaming and carrying on, and of course it doesn't matter whether they're in Queensland or they're just former Queenslanders or potential Queenslanders or people just angry doom scrolling in the middle of the night from Tasmania. The pylon begins. So, of course, we get this from the Shadow Health Minister.
I have received vile messages and threats of violence on my phone, my email, my social media and to my office. As a childhood victim of domestic family violence, these threats have been terrifying. I now ask that the incitement of these threats and stop and plead with the Health Minister and others to take down her misleading and deceitful videos.
Now, she's right about pushing back on the outrage. She also has her own personal story to tell. But you saw in that exchange there that the reason I shouldn't be part of the pylon is because of what's happened to me in the past. The reason there should be a pylon is because we need to change the subject from what we're actually debating in the parliament. Now, Queenslanders will not be voting on this exchange this week, but it is a perfect example about a desperate government that is in the hole, down in the polls, and has no record to run on when it comes specifically to issues of health. It's what I warn people about consistently, about as bad as this government is, the Labor Party in Queensland is very good at playing politics, very good at quick distraction over here, very good at trying to make mistakes of the opposition, real or imagined, in the couple of months before an election as the reason that they should remain with another 4 years in power to only make things worse than the last time that they were in power. Oh, yeah. All MPs have been told to be careful about what they do on the socials, but the Shadow Health Minister is the one who, of course, has now been referred to the Ethics Committee for her behaviour in Parliament, as opposed to Shannon Fentiman deliberately trying to change the subject. This would be the same Ethics Committee that, of course, had no judgment on the Premier when he was caught lying to the Parliament. Directly lying to the Parliament. Because, of course, there's no upper house, the government has the numbers, and it will be a kangaroo court that will, of course, try to extend the issue as a way of distracting from their own failures, which mount by the day. Now, on this show, we back in small business. We back in small business because obviously it is the type of family I was brought up in and it is the absolute heart of our country. I have endless respect for people who go all in and they back themselves. Now, of course, this government has no idea about small business. Why do I say that? Because there are only two, count them, two members of the Albanese cabinet that actually claim to have any experience whatsoever in small business. One of them is Don Farrell, who had his own wine label when he was out of the parliament for a couple of years. The other is Tony Burke, but I don't know exactly what he does, even doesn't mention it in his actual bios. That's it. The rest of them were either staffers or union staffers or union lawyers or union delegates. They don't have experience in small business. Small business, remember, to the modern Labor Party, unnecessary. Because their idea to build a permanent majority, like they seek to build in Queensland, like they have built to this point in Victoria, is that you are either dependent on the government when it comes to welfare, that's why you vote for them. You're dependent on the government because you work for the government. The number of public servants has exploded in both states since Labor came to power. And the third is that if you are in business, your biggest client will be the government. Therefore, small business who are not part of that all whatsoever, whatever. Which is why, when Jim Chalmers stood up in the budget, not this budget, but the one before that, 12 months ago, you know, the same budget where they took $1,500 off 10 million workers as part of the instant tax return, you know, that budget. Well, they made a decision that they were going to continue a system where people were able to claim for their small business thousands of dollars on stuff for their small business and then were able to write it off against their tax. Well, guess what? Small businesses now think they won't be able to do that about the year that's just gone. Why? Because the piece of legislation required to pass last budget's stuff is currently locked up and stuck in the Senate. It's never been passed, they'll run out of time, and people who invested money assuming they'd be able to claim it back will now be thousands of dollars in the hole. My suggestion for how they might be able to actually get the government to give them back what was promised, maybe delay for a year the Prime Minister getting not one but 2 private jets. Yeah, talked about it again. Talking about it every day I can. Oh, well, we care about cost of living and we care about small business and we care about welfare. P.S. We're getting private jets. You're getting $36 a week or $25 in power credits, please. Now, as you know, I'm more obsessed with American politics than UK politics. It's just my flavour. It's just what I'm into. And I get into all the data and details. And, you know, I talk about the swing states and the this and the that. It's just a thing, I really like it. But of course, the UK is about to have its election. Rishi Sunak made the decision to have an early election because he had hoped that basically the Labor Party, the machinery of it is not quite right. But the election's not till July, so I think they'll be able to work it out. I've got to say I felt for the poor bloke, where clearly he's going to make an announcement. And once you've said you're going to make an announcement, you have to make the announcement, rain, hail or shine. Perhaps could have taken it inside, but still. Why does everyone say that this thing is a foregone conclusion? Let me show you the polls. Because currently 7 out of 10 people in Britain believe that Keir Starmer will be the next Prime Minister because Labor will win the election. But also, how do we get to that point in time? Because the current Prime Minister, well, 55% say that he is incompetent, 56% say he's indecisive, 59% say he's untrustworthy, 61% say he's weak, and 54% say that he is dislikable. And as for the primary vote in the system right now, it's basically 2-1 of Labor in front of the Conservatives, and their system works that whoever has the highest votes wins the seats. No preferences. By the way, if we had this system, we'd have a lot more Liberal governments than we currently have under our system. And speaking of the American election, His Holiness, the Pope has found a way to have an opinion about one of the key, if not big, issues coming up at the next election in the United States up in November. And of course, it's to do with the border. It's to do with the literally, 9 million, Cadam, 9 million people who have crossed over that border since Joe Biden and Kamala Harris came to power. It's a disgraceful number, and it's one of the big reasons why, well, lots of people in places that you wouldn't expect are thinking to vote Trump, because 9 million people is a lot of people who are coming into to the country. And recently, a TV news presenter, one of the version of their 6 p.m. news readers, was sitting down and having a conversation with His Holiness, and after we get a story about her, he has a story about him.
My grandparents were Catholic, immigrated from Northern Ireland in the 1930s to the United States, seeking a better life. And I know your family too fled fascism. And you have talked about, with migrants, many of them children, that you encourage governments to build bridges, not walls.
Okay. Anyway, the actual Pope says
I grew up in Texas, and I don't know if you've heard, but the state of Texas is attempting to shut down a Catholic charity on the border with Mexico that offers undocumented migrants humanitarian assistance. What do you think of that?
That is madness, sheer madness. To close the border and leave them there, that is madness.
Easy for him to say. Now, technically, not technically, but Vatican City, it's kind of like a country within a country, remember? So what do you think the Pope would do if 9 million people decided to just park themselves in the middle of the Vatican, not leave when it's time to leave and say, no, we're going to live here? Do you reckon that'll be happening anytime soon? Easy for him to say what should be happening in America when he knows it wouldn't happen where he lives. Quick break, back with more. Plenty to talk about, including who's the winner and loser of the week. And a very special guest will join us before we're done tonight, so believe me, you're going to love tonight's show, and I'm glad you're there. Thanks for watching, beautiful people. And speaking of, Lisa Goddard joins us now in Brisbane. Michael Kroger joins us in Melbourne. Hello to you both. Now, Michael, I'll start with you. Every day there is some think piece somewhere in the great spin of the Australian media that basically runs the narrative of people over a certain age, baby boomers have never had it better, got their feet up, spending lots of money, and it's their kids and grandkids that end up getting affected here. You know, again, we'll show you some of these that are coming up right now. Now, there's people, I think Ross Garnaut came out today and said, oh, you know, it's harder to be young now than it was back then, all the rest of it, right? But what do you think about the politics of this? Because, you know, many people watching us right now will be in that group that supposedly are the evil ones that are ruining the country. Well, hang on. Aren't they also the ones who did a lot of work, who've taken care of their parents, who were literally their primary carers before their parents passed away? They're the ones who went without, so their kids, Generation X, was able to have their life. I hate this stuff. What do you think when you read it, and do you think there's a political element to this as opposed to sort of looking and dissecting a financial problem?
Over what age are we talking about, by the way, Paul?
Well, this is the baby boomer.
Just to... That probably includes people like me. Probably. I think so. I just wanted to be, clarify that, mate. So, well, what you're saying is right. Of course, people make sacrifices. But I think the other point I'd make is this, that COVID has taught older people not to waste time. We're not getting any younger. Life is very short. If you've made decisions and you won't change those decisions, you're stuck with them and may not be for too much longer. So, life can end very, very abruptly. And so I think a lot of older people, because of COVID, are thinking, well, we've seen the shocking deaths of so many people during the pandemic, heart disease, etc. Could happen to anybody. So I think people of an older generation are probably spending up because, the sands of time, mate, are passing through the hourglass.
But also, Lisa, they're allowed to. This is what I find so frustrating about all of this. Yeah. They're allowed to, right? I won't divulge the personal circumstances of my parents, but, geez, they were involved in the care of their parents. My stepdad the same, like the idea that basically, oh, how good's this? We've inherited mum and dad's house and all that. But it's just rubbish. It's rubbish.
Exactly. And firstly, Paul, thank you for sending that to Michael's way instead of me first.
Not you're forever 21, my love. Forever 21.
Exactly. Anyway. Look, I absolutely agree. I know how hard my parents have worked, for example. And look, they certainly aren't out there living the high life at all. They've owned their home. They've worked hard to get to that point. But, if you have got the money there, Michael's right, you go out and enjoy it and spend it. And look, the young people today need to learn that they need to knuckle down a bit and not have the dream home that's going to be in the inner city. They have to accept that they're going to have to live in the outer suburbs. And I'm sorry, if your older parents want to go out and enjoy their life, do it. Because on the flip side of this is a reality that the largest sector of this society that's finding themselves homeless are women over the age of 55.
Correct.
They're the sorts of surveys that we should be looking at, not the ones that are saying, oh, here are these people who have worked hard and tut, 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 they're out there enjoying their life and spending money on travel, and the young people can't afford their avocado on toast.
Well, again, let alone the divorced bloke who worked way longer than he was supposed. I mean, yeah, so when this generation just gets all put in one basket, as demographics speak to, geez, it's insulting to people. So anyway, I think it's worth talking about. Now, surprise, surprise, but apparently there's a cost of transition when you move from one source of energy to another. Michael, I was shocked by this. The CSIRO, of course, put a price on nuclear energy. Well, the CSIRO also put a price on renewable energy, and the price on renewable energy was $1.4 trillion. Oh, but now that's been halved to only $500 billion. The politics here. Peter Dutton is teasing out elements of this. In his budget and reply speech, if anyone was actually paying attention to the detail about this subject, he said the locations for these things will be existing power plants, all right? The idea that one's coming to a suburb near you is garbage, right? The plan is if there used to be a coal-fired power station and maybe there'll be a giant battery gets the biscuit and then that's what's going to go in. So people who've always lived next to a power plant will be the ones that potentially would be living next to a new form of it. But don't you love the lefties? Now cost of transition matters, Michael.
Mate, by the way, wouldn't you love it if Dutton announced one was going to one of the Teal seats?
I'll settle for a wind farm on North or South Head.
He won't do that, but anyway. Look, mate, I just can't help thinking this whole renewal debate is just like running into a fog still. I mean, every day where there's potential blackouts, there are not. We've got, you know, the energy market regulator warning about power shortages, etc., etc. We've got Bowen spending a fortune. The coal-fired power stations are evil, but no, we need them. You know, we need more gas. No, we don't. You know, we're living off the back of revenues from coal and liquid natural gas exports and iron ore exports. You know, we've got all the major OECD countries in the world going nuclear, but no, it's a terrible thing. Oh, OK, but we're having nuclear subs, but nuclear power is terrible. I mean, it's just all a fog, this debate. And I think the average person, their head is spinning, particularly when Albo promises big savings off your energy bill. It's easy, $275. I know you're not. I think people are looking for some kind of clarity. Bowen just puts everyone's head into a spin. Dutton's got sort of some clarity about what he's saying. He seems to have a roadmap to go forward, which he's releasing piecemeal. And look, mate, I'm not the fan of the CSIRO that I was 20 or 30 years ago, since they predicted 15 or so years ago that we're all going to run out of water in all the major cities. They seem to have taken the alarmist view on global warming, and they've just damaged their credibility in recent years. They're not who they were. So Dutton's giving us some clarity. I'm not sure Obo is, and I think every time Chris Bowen gets before a microphone in his very excited manner, he turns people off, mate.
Yeah, I'm absolutely with you. Lisa, can I talk about the she said thing in and around the Queensland Parliament this week? Again, you could not have seen a more offended person have an internal smile than Fentiman. And then the shadow in turning around and saying, hey, stop the pile-on, brings up her history, all right? It's not a great day for everyone, but still. Does it not give you an insight into how, frankly, politically craven I think the Labor Party is in Queensland here, where they're going, great, we don't have to talk about hospitals, let's talk about how mean the shadow health minister is.
Yeah, you've got hospital ramping sitting at about, last time I checked, 45.5%. But what they're making a deal out of now is trying to get, Twitter followers or ex-followers and Instagram and Facebook shares pushed out there to take a swipe at the opposition. So I think, look, Ros Bates said and clarified it, that she said cross your legs. Obviously, the government said it was something very different, which wasn't appropriate. It's just mucky. It's just murky. And the Speaker of the House made a very good point where he said that you now have these content creators who are after good copy, and that's exactly what this has come down to. It's clickbait. They're using the floor of Parliament for clickbait, and that's what we've come down to now, while you've got women, pregnant women around this state in regional areas unable to get to a hospital. So I just, look, if you think I looked at that and went, you know what, if you're sitting in a pub out in regional Queensland somewhere and someone spoke about someone being close to giving birth, you may very well hear them say, well, they better cross their legs before they can get to a regional hospital.
Correct.
So,
look, normal people say things that the polite world doesn't actually talk about anymore, and that's certainly what clearly was being said in that moment. Now, I'm going to get to winners and losers because I've got a sense, Michael, who your winner and loser is going to be, and your loser is going to maybe take a little time to explain. Who do you think is your winner and loser this week?
No, you got that wrong. The winner tonight is the person in Adelaide.
Yes.
Who's collected the whole $150 million in Powerball. One winner. Unless we've got an Adelaide address, mate, it ain't us. So congratulations to that person. On winning that. And I'd have to say the loser of the week, Rishi Sunak, the British Prime Minister. That was just a train wreck of an interview. And if I saw all your stats before, and if you can sum up Sunak in one stat, there was a poll published showing have they done a good job or a bad job in immigration, right? Typical core Conservative issue. 8% thought he was doing a good job. 84% said he was not. Rishi Sunak is down with Stephen Miles in the category of where, remember Steve Carell, that famous point in the movie of over the stock market crash, he said zero. And that's, not margin call, the Big Short.
Big Short.
He said zero. Remember, he was at that conference in Las Vegas. Rishi Sunak is with your friend Stephen Miles down in the category of zero chance of being re-elected.
I am with you. All right, Lisa, winner or loser?
We shall see. Winner is the lady that was in the media yesterday who went from living in a tent in this city into a house because of the Salvation Army. And I think every other person at the Salvation Army is out there trying to put a roof over their heads while the government, like you say, focuses on Twitter fights and cheap social media shots. And the loser, well, Paul, it was going to be the fact that, and I thought it'd be parochial, in Queensland there's now a church taking the 4X brewery to court over a decision that is going to try and stop them expanding the brewery and creating more drinks apart from the beer. But after listening to your editorial, I think the loser is every small business owner who's going to have a staff member say, I want a puzzle table and a Lego table, please.
To deal with my stress. I'll go seriously. Thank you, guys. Do appreciate it. Have a wonderful weekend. Love you guys, and we'll see you again next week. All right, quick break. Back with more. Some very special people with a very important story to tell. We'll get to them in a moment or two's time, and the late debate after that here on Sky News Tonight. It's been a long time since I lost my little boy, Leo. You remember that experience? We went through it together, and we think about the little people that aren't here each and every day, and there are so many lovely people who come up and still talk to me about it today. In that spirit and the spirit of generosity that you've always shown me, I want you to show it now to two special people who sadly are dealing with the same sense of loss for a little girl called Celeste. It is Michelle and Tim McCranna, and they join us now. I've got your last name wrong. I apologise. So Celeste was still born in 2021?
2001.
Oh, 2001, I apologise.
Yep.
You're about to go off and do something in her honour and to try to raise money for the Stillworth Foundation. They are incredible. Dr. Sean Seho and all the people involved in it are my heroes. You're going to run 1,000 kilometres from Adelaide to Port Melbourne. You want to try to raise $1 million. That's a long way to run, right? When you're running for a little person who's not here, that's what gives you the strength. But what gives you the idea to go for that long a run?
Solitude, no. Basically, funding. Like I've done a little bit of raising funds for the Stillworth Foundation before through running, not 1,000 kilometres. I've done 100 kilometres, and I just felt like I needed to do more. Grief is a lifelong thing. Mm-hmm. So, and running has been my solitude for dealing with that. So I thought to myself before I told Tim, what can I do? Well, I really need to be noticed. I need to make, to get $1 million, you need to do something big. And I thought there's so many of these young guys running around Australia and doing all this. Why not, have this, I will be leaving on my birthday, have this 54-year-old mum run to Port Melbourne from Adelaide.
That is amazing. Now, Tim, you are a powerhouse. He's been relentlessly patient trying to talk to me, but we've been able to get you here, and I do appreciate it, because it's not that there's one person watching that needs to give $1 million, all right? People can give a small amount, but enough of them together gets us in the right place. We've had this whole conversation about a tax cut or a power, all the rest of it, right? Run me through some of the sums, right, about how small an amount, a relatively small amount of people, gets us to $1 million.
Yeah. So our first one was looking at 166,000 people giving up coffee for the day. So $6.
Wow.
That gets us it. Australians drink more than 2 cups a day. So it's an easy thing. So that is an easy thing for us to do. Then another thing recently, I think, is the government giving $300 to people. We only need 3,300 people.
Yeah, good point.
To say, okay, I don't need that 300. And I'm sure driving around Sydney the last few days, there's a lot of people that don't need it.
Correct.
I'll donate mine.
Yeah.
I'm sure you'll donate yours.
Many times over, yes.
And we could probably do it over the next couple of nights to
Yeah.
get 3,300 people to donate that amount.
And look, so let's just get it up there, get everyone seeing, right, because you never know who's watching, right? Stillrunning.com.au. Stillrunning.com.au is the website where hopefully we can get $1 million before you take off, because it is going to be in a couple of months' time. We're going to keep mentioning this a lot in the next little while. But give us an idea about what $1 million to the Stillbirth Foundation does. I mean, research, right?
It's research, but also after talking with the foundation, with Sean, we were over here about a month ago, and gaining the understanding that they have, they know what they need to do. You know, there's the new Safer Baby bundle that it's like an easy thing. It's an awareness program. I would love to see a health campaign on TV for something so simple.
Great idea.
You know, we did slip, slop, slap and stop smoking, all these things. I mean, that's an easy thing to do. But yeah, research, you know, it's money. You need money. Like, so as Sean said, they know what they need to do. They just need the money to be able to do it.
Tim, I never forget when we're trying to sort of put one foot in front of the other. When it was Leo, my wife just turned to me and said, "You're Leo's dad," right? And any time I've ever felt any level of adversity since, you go, "No, Leo's dad, up we go," right? How proud are you of this lady?
Amazingly proud. So she does some crazy things. We were in the cafe, and she told our son first, and she put this little note to me, and I said, read it. I'm going to run from Adelaide to Melbourne, 1,000 kilometres.
She's frightened to tell
And she only wanted to raise a small amount. I said, no.
No, go big.
We're going big.
Yeah.
We're going to go big, because if we were in business and we were having 6 rejects a day, we would fix it the next day. We would throw money at it.
100%.
We're in the same position here. We've got 6 babies dying every single day. All we need is a little from a lot of people, and we can change that. We can reduce those numbers by more than 20%.
Amazing.
You know, if there's people out there now listening, how much would they pay if they knew that baby was going to die?
100%.
A lot of people won't do that because they've never experienced it. Most humans will only do stuff after when they've experienced it.
Well, and this is why we constantly talk about it on this show, because everyone watching the show over a long period of time has experienced and has known somebody who that's gone through. So strength and love to you both. We'll talk plenty times between now and then. Stillrunning.com.au. Stillrunning.com.au. Thank you, guys. Do appreciate it. Stillrunning.com.au. Have I mentioned it enough? Everyone watching right now, whatever you can, stillrunning.com.au. Quick break, back with more.
Thanks.
Just before I go tonight, stillrunning.com.au. Just before I go tonight, I don't know why, but this week I decided to ring a lot of people that I haven't spoken to for a long time and reconnected with them, and it's been an amazing week. I want you to think about that person that you used to get along with so well for whatever reason, whatever thing, 5-10 years ago. The number is still in the phone. Just ring him. You'll be surprised how awesome the chat will be. Have a great weekend. Ta-da.